Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 books that I want to reread in 2022. Now, I don't know about you, but as a child I was a habitual rereader. A lot of my favorite childhood texts are worn, they're clearly well-read, well-loved texts. As I went into university, I was always reading new things, and then I started a YouTube channel where there isn't really a value in like rereading your favorite book every month. There's this like feeling, whether or not it's true, that viewers want to learn about new books. Like that's the purpose of a channel, is to sort of share your thoughts on the new things that you're reading. Very rarely do I reread now. And so I want to make a conscious effort to try and fit that in. I have in the past tried this before. I picked 12 books that I wanted to reread, so 1 book a month would be a reread, and that didn't happen. And so instead I wanted to focus on 5 books that I want to reread. Now, that's not going to be the only rereading that happens this year, and that's part of the reason why I'm picking only 5 rereads. I have a couple of reread projects that are happening with Patreon right now. We are moving into chapter 2 of the Red Rum Book Club. This is the patron exclusive Stephen King book club, and we will be reading 6 of Stephen King's texts, the next 6 in publication order, and quite a few of those are rereads for me. There are a handful of new ones, but I think at least half are rereads. I'm also working on a Tamora Pierce reread project. If I manage to achieve what I want to with that project, there will be quite a bit of rereading there as well. I figured adding another 12 books to reread is maybe too much rereading, and so I decided to pick 5 books that I really wanted to reread. Let's just jump into them now. The first book I have been thinking about ever since the start of the 2020 pandemic, and that is Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. So this is a pandemic novel. It is soft science fiction. I first had this come into my life in a science fiction course in my 3rd year of university. Connie Willis was one of 3 women in the whole course. Everything else was like very, very doodly, very manly. I hated it all, except for like the 3 women in this course. I've reread Marge Piercy, Woman on the Edge. Oh, you know what? That wasn't part of the science fiction course. That was part of a women's studies course. There were only 2 women in the science fiction course. I digress. This is a pandemic novel, so here we have a near future in which time travel is possible and historians have the opportunity to study the past firsthand. They don't have to rely on like wonky, outdated academic accounts like the shreds of archival research that exist. They can get fully suited, fully trained in like the language and customs of the day and get sent back to the past and go on a research trip to learn about the history that they're interested in. If I remember correctly, there is a mishap in which our protagonist, a female historian, is sent back to the past accidentally during a plague outbreak in the Middle Ages. And she's been immunized against this, but basically everybody around her is dying. Simultaneously, in the present, a plague has broken out, and I believe the person who was supposed to execute the technology to pull her back to the present is either ill or dead, and so she ends up in the past a lot longer than she's supposed to be. This idea of this dual pandemic novel, part of it taking place in the much, much distant past. It's been a novel that's on my mind ever since the 2020 pandemic. I actually purchased the next book in this trilogy. They're loosely connected, so I don't think I have to reread this one to refresh myself for the second book, but I would like to reread it anyway, and then this might set me up to pick up the second book, which I already own. It's on my TBR. The next book I have here is The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. So I read this in high school just for shits and giggles. I fell in love with his writing and have slowly started to collect all of his books in these like old Penguin Editions. I, as a completionist, want to read all of his works, and this is the work that sparked that interest. However, I don't remember much about this text, very loosely. What I know about this text is that folks with disfigurements and disabilities are outcast. I have no idea how that fits in with any sort of plot. It's been that long. The other reason I'm interested in reading this is because I wasn't the critical reader that I am now. I did not have those skills in high school that were taught and honed and developed throughout 2 university degrees and many, many years of practice. And so I'm curious how disability and disfigurement is represented in this text. So yeah, I would like to reread this with older, hopefully wiser, more critical eyes. The next book I have here will dialogue with another video that I have coming out, which is my 2022 TBR, and that is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So this is the book that had me fall in love with Shirley Jackson, and this is from the end of her career. So she published 6 novels, and from what I have seen, reading her 2 final novels and a couple of her earlier works, we can see her wrestling with similar themes throughout. The domestic women's roles and a descent into madness. By the time we get to her last 2 works, those are really honed and crafted and just chef's kiss. Because I have a few of her earlier works on my 2022 TBR, I would like to sort of put the bow on that Shirley Jackson package and reread this novel that sparked the interest in the first place. So The Haunting of Hill House, if you've seen the Netflix adaptation, is very different from the Netflix adaptation. So we have a group of humans who are staying in this allegedly haunted house. There is an occult scholar, his assistant, the future estate inheritor, a couple of other people, I believe, and they enter into this space, I guess, to determine whether or not this house is actually haunted or what is happening in this house. And this is just such a gorgeous novel. I think I will only appreciate it more on the reread, also having read quite a few of her other works. The next book I have here, I don't really have a specific reason for rereading other than I enjoy this human's YouTube videos and I don't get enough of her content, and that is The Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Doughty. Doughty is a death-positive mortician, and she has a channel here on YouTube where she talks about death, the death industry, death practices, and really makes us more comfortable with death. And this book came into my life at a perfect time. I remember really enjoying this and getting a lot out of it, and it's been a while. I would like to revisit it, and that's really the only reason. And what better reason, right? This is why we reread. We want to reread. The final book I have here is a part of the Tamora Pierce reread project, and I decided to put something quite far into the Tortall universe on this TBR in hopes that it would motivate me to actually continue the reread project. So that is Trickster's Choice. This is the first in a duology about Alana the Lioness's daughter. I believe this came out when I was in high school, and I read it because it was Tamora Pierce, but I didn't love it the way I loved the works that I had encountered as a very young human. I never reread this. What I have heard about this book is that it looks at colonialism and race and possibly slavery. And there is a throwaway line in the very first Alana book about there being slavers in Tortall, and then it never comes up again as a thing that Tortall does or participates in. So I'm curious what is happening here. I've also heard that Alana's daughter Allie is very sexually liberated, has a lot of agency, and that may not have interested me in high school, but it does interest me as an adult reader now, especially somebody who, for the longest time, I just haven't got my shit together. I've been interested in the representation of sex in text that we give to young adults. And so, for multiple reasons, I have an interest in getting to this place. And I hope that putting this on a 5-book reread TBR will help push me to actually achieve this year. So those are the 5 books that I want to reread in 2022. Let me know your thoughts on rereading in the comments down below. Do you reread? And if you're a content creator yourself, how does rereading fit into what you do? Does it impact your content production at all? Do you feel this sort of like hamster wheel desire to always be reading new things, reviewing new things? I would love to hear from you. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons who make videos like this possible. They tip me for the creation of these videos so that you are able to see them for free. If you would like to learn more about changes to Patreon in 2022, the book clubs that I will be hosting, I will leave a video linked above. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you are doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon. Bye!